The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting golden patterns across the wooden floor. Everything was in its place, the bookshelves dusted, cushions neatly arranged on the cream-colored sofa, and the lingering scent of vanilla-scented candles filling the air. By the fireplace, a small ceramic angel sat with open wings, as if embracing the quiet stillness of the home. In the kitchen, the soft hum of the refrigerator mixed with the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. It was a peaceful home, a sanctuary of warmth and comfort, and for years, Lena Carter believed it was her safe haven. She had always cherished the little things, the way the morning light kissed her skin while she washed dishes, the whisper of leaves outside her bedroom window, the comfort of a quiet evening with her husband, Ryan Carter. They had met 8 years ago at a nonprofit charity event. Ryan was charismatic, confident, and had a laugh that made people want to be near him. Lena, on the other hand, was soft-spoken and observant, with a kindness that ran deep. Their connection was effortless, as if fate had gently nudged them together. 1 year later, he proposed, under the shade of an old oak tree. Surrounded by loved ones, they exchanged vows. Lena still remembered how his fingers trembled slightly when he slipped the ring onto her finger, how he whispered, "We've got this," before their first kiss as husband and wife. For a while, it truly felt like they did. The first few years of their marriage were filled with love and discovery. They bought a small house, nothing grand, but full of character. The wooden floors creaked in the hallway. The staircase had a banister. Ryan refinished himself. And in the backyard, Lena planted tulips every spring. They had dreams of children of laughter echoing through the halls, of tiny feet pattering against the wooden floor. They painted the nursery a soft sky blue, even when the room remained empty for years. Month after month, pregnancy tests came back negative. Year after year, Lena carried the silent ache in her heart, even when it hollowed her from the inside. Ryan, at first, stood by her. He held her hand at doctor's appointments, made jokes to lighten the sterile, clinical air. They tried everything: diet changes, hormone treatments, even a grueling round of IVF that left Lena exhausted and bruised. Still, nothing. Until, on a quiet afternoon, the impossible happened. Lena sat frozen on the edge of the bathtub, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines, the proof of life growing inside her. When Ryan came home, she handed him the test without a word. For a moment, joy flickered in his eyes. He lifted her into his arms, laughing too loudly, spinning her around. "We're finally getting our miracle," he whispered. In the days that followed, Lena floated through life wrapped in a golden haze. She imagined tiny shoes, soft lullabies, the warmth of a newborn against her chest. She knitted tiny hats and socks, relearning the motions of a craft she had abandoned years ago. Ryan, at first, was attentive. He made her tea in the mornings, asked about her doctor's appointments, rested his hand on her belly when they sat on the couch. But slowly, shadows crept in. Ryan started coming home late. He lingered in his car before entering the house, scrolling through his phone with a distant expression. He stopped asking about the baby, began canceling plans with vague excuses. Lena convinced herself it was just stress, that he needed time to adjust, that once the baby arrived, things would return to the way they had been. Until one night, everything shattered. Ryan stood in the middle of their kitchen, his face emotionless as he said the words that would change everything. Lena stood frozen in the kitchen, her body numb as his words echoed in her mind. The weight of them crashed down like a wave, sweeping away everything she had believed. For a long moment, she couldn't move, couldn't speak. She stared at Ryan, the man she had loved and trusted for years, as he stood there, his face blank, unreadable. She had never imagined this moment. Never in her wildest dreams did she think he would look at her and say those words. She hadn't thought about where to go, how to survive. She hadn't even asked him to explain. Pride and disbelief held her tongue. She simply turned away, as if she couldn't even bear to look at the man she had once shared everything with. With no choice, Lena grabbed her coat, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the zipper. The cold air outside hit her harder than expected, and the darkness of the night seemed to swallow her whole. She walked aimlessly, her swollen ankles aching with each step, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't even feel her feet as they carried her forward. She passed streetlights, flickering like tired sentinels, casting faint glows on the sidewalk. Her thoughts were a mess, swirling around her in a haze of confusion and sorrow. She was pregnant. She had a life growing inside her, yet here she was, alone, abandoned on the street with nothing but the clothes on her back and a child who deserved so much more than this. The shelter she found was cold, quiet, and unwelcoming. The thin walls offered no comfort, but they were better than nothing. The other women barely spoke to her, their eyes hollow with their own pain. The isolation pressed in on her, making every breath feel like a struggle. For days, Lena moved through the motions, trying to survive, trying to keep her baby safe. She didn't speak much. She couldn't find the strength to. She clutched the pamphlet the social worker had given her, a blur of information about government assistance programs, housing, and temporary job resources. It was all too overwhelming. Then, in the midst of the chaos, she met someone. A woman named Glenda, who worked at a nearby radio station. Glenda was quiet, but there was something comforting in her presence, like a lighthouse in the fog. Lena wasn't sure what compelled her to open up, but she found herself telling Glenda about her life, about Ryan, and how everything had come crashing down so quickly. She spoke of the love she had once shared with him and the devastation of being tossed aside. She spoke of the baby, the tiny heartbeat she could still hear in her mind. The interview on the radio station was a turning point. Lena's voice, trembling but steady, told her story to the world. She didn't cry. She simply spoke the truth, the raw reality of her situation. She didn't know how she would raise the child, where they would live, or how she would survive. But she promised she would try. She wouldn't give up. One day, while Lena was at the cafe, a young woman approached her hesitantly. She was in her late 20s, and her eyes were filled with the kind of sadness Lena had seen too many times in the mirror. The woman asked, "Are you Lena Evans, the one from the radio?" Lena nodded, her heart skipping a beat. The woman's eyes welled up with tears. "I was in a shelter last year," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I heard your interview. It helped me. It made me believe I could leave him. I thought if you could do it, maybe I could too." Lena stood, surprised and moved, and without a word, she wrapped her arms around the woman. No explanation was needed. It was a silent acknowledgement that the two of them understood the weight of what it meant to be in that situation, to feel powerless and abandoned. As Lena returned to her small room above the cafe that evening, she gazed out the window, reflecting on the path that had led her here. It wasn't the life she had envisioned, but it was her life, and she was holding on to it with everything she had. In the weeks that followed, more and more people reached out. They brought small gifts, letters of encouragement, and promises of support. The local community had rallied around her, and she wasn't just receiving help. She was beginning to become part of something bigger, something that wasn't built on pity, but on real human connection. One evening, as Lena was working on her journal in the quiet of the cafe, James approached her with a piece of paper. "I know you've been writing," he said, handing it to her. There's a small publishing house that's interested in your story. They want to talk about turning it into a collection. It's about your voice, your experience. It's worth sharing. Lena stared at the paper, the words swimming in front of her eyes. For so long, she had felt like an invisible person, someone whose story was too painful, too personal to share. But now, the idea of sharing her journey with the world didn't seem so impossible. She had walked through hell and come out on the other side. Maybe, just maybe, her story could inspire others the way she had been inspired by the kindness of strangers. After a few days of hesitation, Lena finally replied to the email, agreeing to meet with the publisher. Her fingers trembled as she typed out the message, but there was a flicker of hope deep inside her. A hope that had been ignited by the very people who had supported her when she had nothing.